Thank you. I was responsible for this overviewing this project. So Anne's going to do most of the talking in this presentation. She's going to run us through the results of the audit. But I just wanted to spend a couple of seconds before she comes up and does that to just give a little bit of context and to say why we did this audit. Because this is the largest C&I audit that's ever been done in Australia. It was a lot of time and energy went into it, and a huge amount of information has come out of it, which Anne will talk about. But just wanted to talk briefly about why do we actually collect all this information, and really it's about the waste strategy. It's about the Waste Less, Recycle More initiative. Essentially, this is some of the foundation information we use to measure the strategy and to develop the programs that we run at the EPA. So, for example, we have the waste strategy. There was a new strategy that came out last year, sets targets out to 2021 for municipal, for C&I, and for C&D, and we gather that information in a number of ways. So, for example, we gather information about all the waste that goes to landfill. But that information basically just comes in. There's a truck that goes over the weighbridge. Most of it's coming as mixed loads. It's not single loads. So when it shows up at the landfill, it's just recorded as C&I waste. And so how we actually then get a sense of, well, what's in the C&I waste? How do we know how we're doing? So how do we then come up with, a breakdown of materials, of recovery versus disposal? We get very good information from the recycling industry telling us we're recycling these particular materials out of the C&I waste stream, but how do we know what the actual recycling rate for those materials are? It's because we go and do landfill audits. We go and look at those when the truck shows up and dumps the stuff out. We look at what's in there, the plastic bags, we open them up, we look at them, etc. And that's how we're then able to get an idea of what's actually in the waste stream, how we're doing on those materials. And then in terms of then the programs, we're able to go, well, what's the main materials in that waste stream? Which are the ones that we should be targeting? So the importance of doing these kind of audits is I can't overstress the importance of it. And of course, the larger the audit, the more involved they are, the better the quality of the information we get. So yeah, just to say, we've actually done this twice before this. So in 2003, 2008, we did audits. Each one gets a little bit bigger in terms of the amount of landfills that we go to and also the type of information we collect. So in the past, we just did Sydney, then it was the greater Sydney area. Now we're doing the whole regulated area. And we've also, in this time, we also extended it to say, not only looking at what's coming in to landfill, what's in the plastic bags, because a lot of it comes in just black plastic bags. You got to open them up to look inside. But we also decided, let's actually go back and, we'll ask the truck, where did you go? Where did you collect this waste from? Get the names of the organizations, the companies, and actually go back to some of those and do an audit at the company to see, well, how much are they source separating? How much of it is ending up in the waste stream? So, with that very quick introduction, I would like to hand over to Anne, and I'll come back at the very end just with a bit of where do we go from here.
Thank you. And you are the stayers, so thank you. So this report and this project, there's a 400-page report. There is data, data, data and data. I can see people rubbing their hands together that want to get hold of this data. No names mentioned. But this project took 6 months of my life, but it was now 6 months ago. So the issue is I've got to remember all these numbers that used to just roll off the top of my mouth. Now I've got to remember what they are. But in essence, the project we looked at 10 landfills, 4 transfer stations over 7 weeks. Every C&I load that came through the gate on the specific days that we were at these locations. If you go, I know most clocks go right, but I'm going left. We did a gatehouse survey where each vehicle was interviewed, the driver, to find out the source, the location, the suburb of where the loads came from, to determine that it was actually C&I and it wasn't it wasn't a domestic load. We visually assessed 2,000 loads in total, and then there was also a physical collection of 300 samples of 10 bags per sample to get the 3,000 samples to physically sort what is in a black plastic bag, because otherwise when you see one of my slides there is a great wad that says black plastic bags, so then you've got to dissect that to say, well, what's in the black plastic bags, because otherwise the information is relatively useless. We visually assessed in total 4,000 tonnes of waste, or 19 million litres that came out of the back of cars, trucks, trailers, hook lift vehicles, and physically sorted 7.6 tonnes of black plastic bags into 84 categories. So APC were the lead consultant. We undertook the field work of all the visual assessments. EC Sustainable undertook the extraction of the samples for the bags and the sorting of the samples of the bags. And then the generator-based survey, which was the third component, was undertaken by Waste Audit, or WAX, and they visited 200 premises to determine what was actually happening at source. So we're trying to marry up what happened at source versus what we see coming out of the back of the vehicle. So this slide, I'm sorry it's a bit busy, but it's basically just showing that in the SMA we did 4 landfills and 4 transfer stations. In the ERA it was 3 landfills, in the RRA 3 landfills, and in total there were 300 businesses that we sampled the bags from. The breakdown of tonnes by vehicle, by load, by material is all across the bottom based on landfills and transfer stations. So there's a lot of data and a lot of information. So in essence, what we do know is that 80% of all C&I waste is disposed of within the SMA, 14% in the ERA and 6% in the RRA, and almost 1.8 million tonnes of waste is disposed of in the regulated area. And of that, about 500,000 tonnes is in garbage bags, and that represents about 80% of what comes into the Sydney market. So this is what we found in terms of what is discharged out of the back of delivery vehicles. So as you can see, the big red square is 28% of those actually garbage bags, followed by 18% of residuals, which tend to be flock, pulp, fines at a post-processing facility. Wood accounted for another 14%, masonry 12%, and plastic 7%, of which half of that plastic was actually plastic film. So they're the big sort of 5 hitters in terms of what's coming out of the back of a collection vehicle. So when you dissect what's in the bags, it looks slightly different. The top 3 materials in a garbage bag from a C&I sector are food at 26%, paper 25%, and plastic 21%. So effectively 72% of what's in a black plastic bag is one of 3 materials. And where those bags predominantly come from are the retail sector. 23% of bags come out of the retail, 22% from manufacturing, 11% from SMEs, and 11% from accommodation and food services. So when you put the 2 stories together, sorry, did I just... Wait a minute, what am I doing? Yeah, so in turn... oops. Sorry, I've just got myself confused here because I'm going the wrong way. Okay, so... Right. Mixed loads represent 68% of all loads that are delivered, and of those, again, we have a huge amount of plastic bags, 33%, wood is 16%, masonry 12%, plastics 10%. So again, another 70-odd% of materials are really coming out of 4 different material streams. If you remove the bags, we've got 40% of material is masonry and plastic coming out of mixed loads. In terms of single material loads, which represent 32% of all deliveries, we've got a huge amount of 50%, 49.8. 50% is flocks, fines and pulp. So they're all the post-processing materials. We have garbage bags are 17%, masonry 12% and wood 10%. So there's some common themes about what is in both of these in these streams. So who generates C&I? As you can see here, it's predominantly manufacturing at 25%, SMEs 17%, retail at 12%, and then health and social assistance at 6.5%. a third of all loads that are delivered to landfill come from the manufacturing sector, and a third of all loads that go to transfer stations are from SMEs. So then we looked at what are the opportunities based on the classification of whether you think these materials are recoverable or recyclable now or in the future, or they're not going to be recoverable at all. And so when we grouped each of these materials into one of these three categories, we then re-ran a series of analysis to try to provide some direction and guidance about where are the opportunities, where should the EPA be putting their future funding and infrastructure. And so what we found there was that 27% of the current C&I waste stream is currently recyclable. And that's mainly the masonry, garden organics, plastic, paper and cardboard. So that's what's recyclable now, if you could extract that material from those loads or prevent it from going into those loads. If we were able to open those plastic garbage bags, we could achieve 50%, which is what's currently potentially recyclable if we could get into those bags to extract the paper, the plastic and the food. So what could be recycled in the future? We've got 27% that's potentially recyclable now. In the future, when there's additional infrastructure and new technologies, there's another 28%. So effectively, in the future, we could potentially recover and recycle 55% of all C&I loads that are going to landfill. And again, if we could extract what was in those bags, given the substantial portion of bags that exist, then we could increase that recovery from 50% to potentially, by another 33%, to 83%. So it's a tall order, but that potentially is what is available. So where are these opportunities? What are those materials? So clearly, because it's a weight-based activity, the heavier the material, the more tonnes there are. So masonry, paper and cardboard, garden organics, plastic, wood, metals and food. So that's, some of those are clearly already the priority materials. This gives you then some numbers about what the scale of magnitude of these particular opportunities and particular materials look like. You'll notice in the report we've basically then dissected each of those materials down into much further detail. So for paper and cardboard, by example, we've been able to identify up to 107,000 tonnes of paper and cardboard in C&I, what sort of paper it is. Is it dry cardboard, loose cardboard, compacted, office, paper packaging, other packaging? Is it in the single loads or mixed loads? And where is it coming from? Is it from SMEs, manufacturing or retail? So we can basically drill down and now really know by what load, what sector and what type of material we're targeting to try to achieve that, the diversion for paper and cardboard. And this is basically expressing the same, it's different information but by percentages. So we're also looked at which regions are producing most of the paper and cardboard and which sectors. So in this one we can see that the SMA is producing 16% of all the cardboard and paper going to landfill, and the majority of it is coming from accommodation and food services and the retail sector. So it's about fine-tuning down where those opportunities are. In this project, it was the first time, there was a number of firsts, but also there was a first where we've been asked to actually undertake a statistical validation of the data. So this was done by our statistician who's worked with APC for 21 years, Dr. Ian Neverson-Smith, and we had an external peer review by Blue Environment of the data. And the results appear remarkably robust for the 2,000 loads and the 3,000 bags. And this gives us confidence that the data and the decisions that we're going to make from this data do stand up. So in the scope, the target variance, maximum target variance was 7% at 90% confidence interval. So I've just used two examples here. For cardboard, the actual confidence interval was 2.6, which means we know that the real factor is somewhere between 2.1 and 3% of the load of the composition was cardboard. We also undertook some trends based on 2008 and 2003 audit results, even though they were slightly different. The generator-based surveys were done basically doing an elaborate bin trim assessment, visually assessing the loads, visually assessing the source material, and then talking to and interviewing the business owners. These reports, this is a separate report that's been produced. This is a breakdown of the size and the type of businesses that were interviewed and assessed. It shows you the waste generation by sector, and manufacturing and wholesale trade generated the most waste in that assessment. and it gives you again a composition by weight of what was found in the general waste bins, what the diversion rates were by sector, and the conclusions from the interviews that they conducted was that there is a significant opportunity to improve waste diversion from the C&I sector, that businesses are supportive of landfill diversion, but that waste is not a core activity. The cost is a major inhibiting factor, space constraints are a significant issue on site, and education is not being conducted effectively. So back to Alex to finish off.
Thank you for that. That was really a whirlwind tour. So I should say that for those of you who have a craving for more, we will be actually doing a much more detailed presentation of these results to all who are interested. I think that's on the 19th or the 20th of May, so not that far away. There'll be information sent out about that on waste updates. Or if you want to know more, please contact me. I'm happy to let you know. We also have published the results on the New South Wales EPA website. So go to the website. This literally just happened in the last couple of days. So we don't have a website up here because we didn't know at the time whether they would actually get done in time. But they have been published. There are also, for those of you who would like to take one away with you, we have overviews. These are about, these are close to 20-page overviews available outside at the EPA stand out here. Have a look around. They're actually back, I think, behind the counter. So, but they should be there. So you can go away with at least that. The 400-page versions on the website electronically. Otherwise, so where are we? Just very quickly. So yeah, it's on the. We'll use the information obviously for a lot of things. Just wanted to acknowledge, first of all the people who were involved in this. So APrince, the other consultants who were involved in subcontracting out of that. The audit panel who gave us advice on setting it up, and all of the landfills and transfer stations who essentially allowed us in to do that audit, and the 197 businesses who did that as well. And finally, the Waste Contractors and Recycling Association, who paved the way essentially for us to come out and do those audits. And so yeah, if you would like more information, contact either Ravi or myself, and that's it. Thank you very much.